Darren Peacock, thanks for joining us, mate. And just want to know, how did your move to Newcastle United come about? You were at QPR, I think.
Yes, yeah. It was. I was having a decent season at Rangers, and then I got sort of the season before. Actually, I got wind up. There were a couple of clubs coming in, and then in the first week in March, I heard that Newcastle were slightly interested in it. I got a phone call from the club saying, "Look, Kevin's interested. Would I be interested to come into the club?" But I would have to put a transfer request in because I was sort of QPR had promised me a new contract at that point, and because QPR were floating on stock market, it seemed to be forgotten about, and I was promised that we were going to talk. And but at that point, it seemed to be a long away from being resolved with my contract at QPR. So I was asked if I'd put a request in to QPR, and that would set the ball rolling for myself to be talking with Newcastle. And then the next day I put a request in, and then that evening I was flying up to Newcastle, which I think Newcastle were playing Ipswich on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
And then I think we've won 3-0, and then I've met the gaffer and the guys at the club who were negotiating, and met the gaffer at the Gosforth Park, and then that was it. Basically, it was as quick as that. And then I signed the next day for the club, and I remember I stayed at without going back home at that point to my place in London. I stayed for a month.
Wow.
It was such a whirlwind that we had games thick and fast. I never went back to London for a month to pick stuff up and that sort of thing. Yeah, so yeah, it happened very, very quickly. Once the ball was set in motion, it happened very, very quickly.
I mean, you signed in March 1994, 2.7 million. It was great. It was great news for Hereford because it meant they got 440,000 as a sell-on clause, which was great for a club like Hereford, of course. Great for them. But just tell us that first meeting with Kevin Keegan. I mean, we hear lots of stories from Bears and Steve Howie and people like that about what he promised them, what he said, what he talked about. Did he? What was your first impressions of Kevin? What did he say to you?
Well, at that point, I think he's still must be on high from the game. Come in, I think it was around about 10:30 at night. I met him at Gosford Park. He came in sort of, as you would expect, like a bundle of enthusiasm. Just, he couldn't really sit down, because I think not only were Newcastle sort of breaking their record more or less, it seemed to be every week at that point, so because Foxy signed just before me, and then he was obviously he didn't really have to sell the club, didn't have to sell the situation, because that was really it was known nationally what was happening at the club. But he had to do his speech, I would sort of say, as what was going to happen at the club, and how really important the supporters were to the club and the region and the area. And he's just, I've said it a few times, but his sort of basic tactical sort of insight to me was that he wants 5 attackers and 5 defenders, and that's how basic it was at that point, where he wanted to play a 4-4-2 and 5 attacking, 5 defending. And although he didn't have to sell it to me, because that really, I'd imagine most players would tell you the same thing, that their minds were made up even before that they met for discussions. So his opening gambit was that 4-4-2, 5 going forward, 5 going back, defending, and that's the sort of the basic way we're going to play. And didn't the facts and figures didn't really come into it. That was really a sort of side issue from my point of view. I'd maybe mind up before I'd really, spoken to Kevin or the club officials.
But did training reflect that then, Darren? Was training fun as opposed to maybe some clubs you'd been to? Maybe it was a bit more regimented.
It was. Steve, training was. I've never seen it before, and I've never seen it since a professional club. It was all fun and games. It was all. Everything was with the football. It was all to really try to improve you as a footballer with the ball. So it was all team games, individual games. Every single session was with the ball. It was all fun. It was 5-a-side, 6-a-side. But it was really, really competitive. That's what I remember. Even though it sounds like a bit of fun, a bit of like keep you uppy, that sort of thing. But it was sort of focused. It's sort of well known that there's some fantastic players at Newcastle at the time on the ball, and same as any other club, the players weren't so good like myself on the ball. But you were focused. There were team games, maybe 6 in a team, and it could be running in and out of cones or sort of little goals, that sort of thing. But it was focused on winning, and if you didn't win, then there would be some sort of it'd be commonplace now, Steve. This sort of thing. But at that time. As I say, I've not seen it before, even though it seems quite sort of basic football sort of theory, but not seen it after. But the enjoyment, it was. Well, I've never enjoyed it. I've never enjoyed training so much. And at times the gaffer would. I remember playing in the FA Cup. We actually just went down to. We walked down from Maiden Castle down into Durham, down at the hotel down there on the river, and we just had sort of tea and a bit of cake, because he thought, and that was a Friday before the game, so it wasn't all sort of, it was football based, but he's seen the advantage of just letting the lads sort of relaxing and enjoying it. I've never sort of come across the day before a game, especially on a Friday, not sort of having any sort of run out or even a warm up. We just had a little walk down to the river, a cup of tea and some cake, and then he sent us off. And funny enough, that's a psychological point of view as well, which I think a lot of people sort of misunderstand from the gaffer's point of view. That was put the lads at ease. It wasn't a rest day, so to speak, but it was the day before a big FA Cup game. So that's sort of another side to the gaffer that there's probably a lot of people don't know.
What was Terry Mack's involvement?
Terry was, I think, he was one of those where he would be the buffer between the players and the gaffer. He would sort of see sort of the sense of humour in any situation where he would try to diffuse the situation, or he would be the gaffer's sort of sidekick, so to speak. And he would try to. He would sort of get your arm around, especially the younger players, because obviously Terry knew the game inside out. So he would be the joker in when it needed to be sort of the tense situation needed to be sort of cut through. So he would be that person because that's his personality, that's his character. He's bubbly, he was sort of charismatic, and he could tell stories, like a fantastic story about when he was playing, or so he could relate to what sort of the players were going through. You could relate to the situation, because he's been at Liverpool and obviously played for Newcastle. So important because the experience that he brought was sort of second to none. And of course, Kevin, he trusted him completely.
Yeah. I mean, training at Maiden Castle as well, you had fans there. Did you find that strange? Did you adapt to that easily, having supporters there, sometimes thousands of people?
Well, it was the first time it happens, you think, Christ, what's going on? And then, especially the school holidays, of course, the numbers grew and grew and grew. And then there would be, of course, John seen an advantage of, he'd bring the burger vans in and the ice cream vans. So it would be like, in the end, it would be like a school fete, so to speak. But the players, I think the players and the gaffer would, of course, the gaffer was totally committed to what the supporters wanted, what the fans wanted, and you've most probably heard it from players that he would tell us to sign every autograph we could before we went in back into to change. But it was some lower league clubs, they don't get what we had at training. You could have 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 watching us train, and it was surreal to begin with. But then you get sort of used to certain situations, and it was for the support. I don't know if this is allowed now. I don't know
No.
if that's sort of no. I know Kenny. He sort of he took that away, didn't he? But it was a strange situation where I would imagine at that point, certainly in England, there would be, I would imagine, I can't imagine another club getting supporters watching training sessions, on a Tuesday morning when it's actually belting it down, that sort of thing. So it was really unusual to begin with, and then we would sort of, it was. I can explain walking out training and getting cheered. It was absolutely mental. Really, it's just I say it's surreal, but it was one of those things where it became part of life of being like a Newcastle player.
Can you remember a typical Kevin Keegan team talk, Darren?
I think you most probably can, Steve. I'd imagine you've heard it from all of them, all the players that you spoke to, and whoever you're going to speak to next. It would just be same team, same subs, and it was so simple. It was the majority of the times because that worked, and it would be we go, oh, okay. And we just get up and start getting undressed and changing. So if there was no sort of, because how the gaffer wanted to play, there was no sort of really in-depth technical or tactical direction, because his direction was getting players sort of individually and boosting them up and giving them sort of confidence. And telling them what he wanted to do individually, but as a team, there wasn't sort of great big, tactical boards, around the dressing room, or there was no sort of, sort of speeches on the wall, that sort of thing, as we know, there's quite a few clubs. But he would just, the majority of the time, because there wasn't that many subs anyway. I think it was 2 or 3 at the time. Mm-hmm. He would say same team, same subs, and we took that as that was his way of dealing with players, and then he would go individually to the players before and after or at half time. So it was very, very minimal sort of. Sometimes we would touch on, about the opposition, but very, very rarely, because we had confidence in the players individually and as a team of what we could do.
You helped Newcastle get to third place, which got us into the UEFA Cup. I mean, was there any discussion amongst the players? Was it more of a struggle with those European games the following season? Because obviously winning the first 6 league games in 94, 95, people were talking about potentially winning the league. But obviously we ended up finishing 6th and then out of European qualification the next year. Did Europe play a factor in that, Darren?
It would have done, because I mean, without looking at stats and that, or actually, I mean, I'd have presumed we got sort of suspensions, sort of injuries. It would have done, because, as I say, the squads back then were so small, weren't they? Yeah, and especially if you're having to rely on younger players coming in. But it was. I think it was. If you see it now, a club within 2 years of getting promoted and then getting to that level at that point, qualifying for Europe, finishing, top 6, 3, 2, and within 4 or 5 years of getting promoted, that would be unheard of now. It would be. It was a learning process, I think, for us. A lot of players were sort of in that situation for the first time, and it was, even though it was so exciting, so we were travelling sort of away. Don't forget the away games, obviously, the supporters know this more than anything. Especially in England, the away games are really, really taxing. And that was same as supporters. The players, we were on a coach, 5-6 hours, maybe midweek as well. So I think it all maybe caught up with some of us. It was a taxing time, but it was. I think if give it another 2 or 3 years within that situation with. Kevin and Terry at the helm, it would have went on to greater things.
Have you got a favourite game that you played in, Darren?
Oof.
Would it be the Manchester United 5-0?
Well, I hesitate to say that, but that sort of, because of what was hinging on it and the time of kick-off and what happened, at Wembley before, and the I can't remember a more intense time, game, for me personally than that game. It seemed like every single thing was on that game. From supporters' point of view, from the players' point of view, and I've never played in a game where, from the team I was playing in, it just went, everything clicked, every single thing clicked. Even though we were, of course, we were smarting from the Wembley game, but it was one of those where we never changed the way we played. Obviously we played better in that game than we did at Wembley, but in general, as everybody knows, he just wanted to go for it, and that's what we did, and that's really the most sort of exciting, most. As I say, there wasn't much tactical theory behind it, apart from just go and play. And again, that was just the gaffer's confidence in his players. That's what stood out to me. Because I know that from the gaffer's point at Liverpool, there's a lot of psychology when he was there. So I think that was most probably his thinking behind it as well. Here's a chance for these players, the same players, to make amends. And
of course, you scored in that game. Had a rare goal from Darren Peacock.
Apparently so, Steve. Apparently so, mate. Yeah, it was one of those where, as I said before, we didn't do much or any free kicks in training or set pieces, that sort of thing. But it was, I think it was Les that's nodded back across the goal, and it looks like I'm trying to get it away, I think, but it did go across, but it was from that point of view, from the rest of the goals, you think, guys, I mean, I'm pleased I scored, but the rest of the goals in that game were absolutely stunning, weren't they? You know, it was. I think you find it hard to get to in one match. The goals, aside from mine, that were absolutely, fantastic goals, and they would grace any game.
Obviously, that season we were 12 points ahead of Manchester United at one point, but 1-0 Cantona and Peter Schmeichel keeping clean sheets every week became the story of the day. Why do you think we didn't win the league that season? Was it just because Manchester United were too good, or was it something else?
I think if you put it like that, were they too good? I don't think so, because we were outstanding before we started to lose that sort of the lead on them. So we were great up to a point, and then I think most probably experience from their manager, Alex Ferguson, experience from their players. Maybe I think we should have had some sort of. I keep going back to tactical, what you want to call it, but I think we should have or could have had some sort of directive, as in how we're going to defend as a team. But I think in general, we've all got to hold our hands up, players, and saying, look, there's times where we, losing that sort of lead it's unusual, but it's one of those things, and we do talk about every time we meet up, the lads, and we just sort of, gosh, we're not going to change it, but how could have we changed it at that point? Because we got into such a lead, 12 points, and then we were doing exactly the same things. So I think looking at it as a general picture, there's lots, maybe 3-4 sort of points where you can point out and go, right there, that should have happened. Now you look at United, how they came up. As I say, with experience in the team and in management, and sort of the whole thing was probably, we would have done things slightly different, but maybe the gaffer wouldn't have done, because that's his philosophy and his principles were just go out and play. So that was for everybody to see.
You mentioned Alex Ferguson there. Obviously, the psychological games that Alex played that season are infamous now. And Kevin, of course, came out at Leeds and came out with that infamous rant on Sky with the headphones on. I'd love it if we beat them. I mean, when were you first aware of that, and what did you make of that outburst?
Well, I think we're first aware of it on the coach on our own, but it was from. I think we're all was probably on the side of Gaffer saying, well, it's not as big that reaction. I mean, as everybody made it on TV and sort of opposing supporters. But I'm pretty sure it was one of the players, and they said, just got on the bus and see what's happened with the gaffer on TV, and it was. I think that was just his passion and commitment coming out, and that's the sort of thing that the gaffer you wouldn't want to change about him. That was his personality. I never really seen it as a big deal. That other commentators and presenters they jumped straight on it and seen it as a sort of a negative or sort of a chink in the armour, but I never really seen it as a big deal. Just his passion and commitment. That's really all I've seen of it.
As quickly as he arrived, he was gone. Kevin departed. You were still at the club when Kevin left. How big a shock was that to you?
Yeah, it was cool. It was. I think it was a shock for everyone. It was. Again, I know I've used the word before, but it was surreal because all the players that came in at that point, the players that come in from outside of the area, he's brought them in. Yeah, so it was straight away. I think players were discussing, has something gone wrong behind the scenes at the board level, that sort of thing, and of course everybody sort of, there's speculation going around, and I think the gaffer was that character where he go, right, that's it, it's not working anymore, I can't do anything else, and I think he let the players were disappointed without a shadow of doubt. I know there were sort of tears from supporters, that sort of thing, and because the gaffer, don't forget, the gaffer was he wanted to know everything about your family. There would be sort of anybody who came down with the players, family-wise, wives, girlfriends, family, they would be invited into a training and have a cup of tea, and he would sit down with your family, and he'd want to know everything about you. So it wasn't only from like a personal, a professional point of view, as in him being the manager, but it was like a personal point of view because he wanted to get to know all about you. So it was a real shock. Yeah, it was a total shock. But we were doing well as well. That's the thing on the pitch. As I said before, another 2 or 3 years, I think, with that management sort of set up, we would have gone on to better things. Personally, I think.
Who was the best player you played with at Newcastle?
Peter
Beardsley.
No doubt about that. Peter was. He was. Everyone says about 2 steps ahead, but he was a grafter. He would chase back. You look at Peter, and he was. His touch, his vision, his passing. And as I said, if he lost the ball, he'd be the first person to try to get that ball back. And he would be very encouraging to players, especially younger players. You can't help but look up to Peter. Even though we had some great players, Ginola, Tino, players coming in, from foreign places, which you don't see. You would see at that point, but their technical ability would be at that point more advanced than the British players. But Peter, he was sort of one of a kind at that point. Yeah, because whether it just came, everything come naturally to him. But with the ball, I mean, and you look back now, and some of the goals he scored was absolutely stunning. And of course, at that point, he's done it all for club and country. He's played at the top level. So Peter was definitely the best player I played alongside.
Is there a funny story or a funny memory that you can think of from back in those times that you can share?
How long you got, mate? Oh gosh, not. If it sports was dinner, maybe. But
who was the joker? Who was the joker in the pack, Darren?
Well, I mean, there's loads of players that Philippe was great fun. Philippe, he was he just got it straight away. We had so many, same as any other club, we had so many different characters that were like Philippe. It was such a joker, but he was, because his English had a twang to it, as we know. It would be funny from him. So, but there was players. I mean, you talk about Lee Clark and Watto. It was just a mishmash of characters and personalities sort of coming together. And it wasn't. I don't think there was a one dominant personality within the changing room. You know, it was all sort of take it. Pavel was, you know, he was quiet, but when he spoke, or when he, especially in a game, or you know, you would listen to him, because he wasn't like where you see keepers on TV absolutely blasting at all his defenders. You know, he was composed and sort of not so sort of vocal as in battering your defenders sort of thing. You know, so it was a general sort of, and I don't know if the gaffer planned it that way. You know, because a lot of managers now, they look into the personalities and the years behind them. You know, what they're like as a person. Whether the gaffer sort of planned that, or he just went out for ability-wise. Do you know what I mean? So it was just honestly, mate, it was a delight to play. You know, especially when the games where I would just sit back and watch it all unfold in front of me.
Last question: how important are the fans, Darren, at Newcastle United?
Well, I remember the gaffer saying to me, you know, at my press when I signed the day I signed, he said, "Look, the supporters, you've got to mention them, because they are the lifeblood. It's not only the club, it's the region, it's the area. They'll follow you in your thousands. That they turn up." And he said, "You will see at training." And he did say, "You've never seen anything like it in training, away support." And it was, I think it was because it was the club was moving forward, and the stadium was getting renovated, refurbished, and building everywhere, and it was more and more supporters were coming into the club, and it was going nationwide and global, wasn't it, at that point? You know, but what always has been and always will be is the core support, which is in Newcastle. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was one of those where I mean, I lived in Horsley, which I thought, well, I need to be. It's not right in the Bringing Heart, is it? But it's not right in the town. But I thought, well, I need to be close to the Newcastle to find out what it means to supporters. Yeah, and even though you get a few sort of bit of stick here and there, but generally, the supporters are very, very, they want to back you up because they want their team, their club to do well. So basically, if it's not for supporters, where would the club be?
Darren Peacock, thanks very much, mate.